Here at the Giver Marketing Network, we don't leave you drifting out in space. We connect you to a coach who will help you build and grow your marketing business. Our process acts as a guide on how to connect with other businesses, maintain good relations, and establish a presence on the Giver Marketing Network. Each member within this collaborative group will have the opportunity to leverage your talent and influence, a true network effect. If you are looking to collaborate on more projects, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network, the most trusted and highest rated collective of specialists on the planet. Here we have a group of like-minded professionals who focus on making valuable introductions and helping each other grow by teaming up. Imagine Upwork meets a network and a coach. The talent collectively includes services like visibility and SEO, creating logos, designing websites, managing social media, outreach messaging, visual storytelling, and much more. Think of what you could do with laser-focused allies strengthening your business while offering your talent to the entire network. Click near this video for more information.
Hello, and welcome to another Giver Marketing Tuesday marketing broadcast. So if you're looking to learn and have some fun at the same time, you're in the right place. Shout out to Kingdom Warriors. Shout out to our Giver Marketing Network, Selling with Dignity. We are in all sorts of wonderful places. So come hang out with us. We love collaborations. If you want us to broadcast to your location too, reach out. Let's talk. I'm excited today because we've got Steve Reiter in the house. Woot, woot. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Christine. How you doing?
Oh, we are going to have some fun. I'm just saying right off the bat, ooh, listen to that voice. I love this. So this is, if you can't tell already from the sound of that voice, we're talking audio today, aren't we?
Yes, audio. Yeah, I come out of a radio background, internationally syndicated radio. I worked for a little nonprofit here in Colorado Springs called Focus on the Family, worked my way up through the ranks, became the chief audio engineer. In 2008, we were inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. And then I left with the founder to go help start Family Talk, which our marketing company told us was the largest rollout in radio history. And so I left in 2012, stepped out on my own, and been doing this now for, this will be the 13th year. Earlier this month was 13 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Look at the background in that. Oh my goodness. I know we're all going, you sound great. You've got this fancy microphone. Talk to us. What do you have there? What is this?
Okay, so this is an Audio Technica AT2020. And a former coworker of mine who was a semi-professional blues musician and now is living in Florida, traveling, playing music all over. I went to his home studio. And he pulled this microphone out and he said, Steve, this is the best dollar for dollar mic in my studio. He had many mics that were much higher priced. The regular version of this is about $100 on Amazon, and the USB version is around $150, I believe. And so I've got mine going from here into a Scarlett 2i2, which is an interface, an analog to digital converter interface into the computer. And so I've got a pop filter, one of these metal pop filters that I like this better than the old fashioned, almost look like black pantyhose pop filters that you would see sometimes on studios, because this actually,
when you say pop filter, what is that to the rest of us?
Okay. So a pop filter helps to diffuse or stop the plosives when a P or a T or one of those hard not really doesn't give a whole lot of air, but when you do a P, you stick your hand in front of your P, that right in front of your hand, when you do a P sound, it's going to hit the microphone and it creates a distortion almost that you want to avoid, because plosives can be just annoying, and it takes a millisecond for the microphone to actually get back. So it really disturbs the diaphragm of the microphone. And so diffusing that air is much better than those old pantyhose pop filters that you see back in old videos of recording studios.
Pantyhose.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so I've got this, and then I've got a mic arm, and yeah, it's in total. My setup
Uh-huh.
is, I think, around $300, maybe $350. And if you get the USB microphone plus an arm plus the filter, you're looking at under $200.
That's not bad. And then we can sound like this too.
Well, it helps to really warm up your voice, because there's something fundamentally different between the internal microphone on all laptops and computers versus a nice microphone that's getting your voice right here. And for anyone that's doing any kind of, presentations online, even regular meetings, or you're appearing on podcasts, it really helps to elevate you in the eyes of the listener when you have something good, a good microphone in front of you, as well as some lighting. I eventually want to get a better camera and some better lighting and backlight my home office. But yeah,
One step at a time. That sounds like a lot of gadgets. It's sounding a little intimidating. You're going to promise me that it's easier than it sounds?
Just to start with something simple, a USB microphone that plugs into your computer. That's it.
There we go.
It's a matter of.
So Joseph is wondering, if you move the filter, give us an example of what it sounds like with or without.
Joe Sharketti, my man, Joe, I love you, but dude, you hear that plosive. You can hear the difference in the audio quality. So I really believe that having having a filter in front is necessary.
Wow. So look at all this information you guys got just in the first 5 minutes of the show. So if it was this good to start with, get ready to take some notes, because we're going to have some fun today. I can't wait to see what else you're sharing with us. What do you think? You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. All right, here we go.
So, the power of audio, how podcasts and audiobooks build trust at scale. So, we are a storytelling species. We've been telling stories since the dawn of time. And there are some neurological things going on that really help to solidify story and audio into our brains and into our memories. So when we hear something, that signal leaves our ears, goes into our brainstem, and then goes into the auditory cortex. Now, from there, it goes into our higher level prefrontal cortex, where, language, memory, and emotion are kind of processed. But it also can emotionally salient sounds that trigger our emotions, or stories that trigger our emotions, also are routed into the limbic system, which is it's plays a major role in emotion, behavior, motivation, long-term memory, and sense of smell. But as it's going through, audio has a way of just settling into our memory and triggering very core and primal feelings that can be unique and lasting. I found stories to be so powerful. I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. So when I was at Focus in 2008, I flew to Nashville, Tennessee, because my boss, Dr. Dobson, called me and he was like, I just did this tour at the Carter House Museum in Franklin, Tennessee. Battle of Franklin, Civil War Museum. So they've got this museum right there talking about the Civil War. And there are, a barn and a house that still have bullet holes from that battle. So I get out there and I've got my normal studio setup, mobile studio setup. And I'm like, Doc, I got an idea. Why don't we on day one do the studio setup in the museum? But then day two, I've got this handheld recorder. And on day two, why don't we walk around and describe what it is that you're seeing? Describe the bullet holes. Let's hear the wind blowing through the trees and us walking along the gravel path, and just take the listener there kind of NPR style. It was beautiful. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we got inside the house, and David Fraley, who was the historian at the time there, he was describing how FBI agents came in and they did the bioluminescent light, and they saw blood spatter on these 16-foot ceilings, and how these FBI agents were just in awe that it was still there almost 150 years later. I come back, I've got more than 3 days worth of audio, and the producers only wanted to do 1 day. And I was fighting like hell because I knew this is good radio. This is just, it's so good. Finally, we compromised at 2 days. We released at the beginning of December. And within 1 week, it was a top 10 broadcast of the year. I like that because, I mean, I proved the producers wrong. I tell that story because that is the impact of story. I guarantee you, most people listening right now, they pictured walking along this gravel path and pictured in their mind what they thought a old 1800s barn would look like with bullet holes still in it. Mm-hmm. That's the power of story. And in 2014, the Journal of Educational Psychology Review study, they did a study called Implications of Cognitive Load Theory for Multimedia Learning. They found that we learn better from hearing than seeing. Researchers found that the retention rate for auditory input was 60 to 75% versus 25 to 40% for visual input. And why is that? Audio, especially in the form of podcasts or audiobooks where someone has earbuds in and they're listening, it can be really intimate. And so anytime someone is appearing on a podcast, or they have a podcast, or they're writing a book, be sure to include stories.
There it is. Write that down, folks. You don't want to remember that.
So a number of people, I would assume, think, yeah, there's so many podcasts out there. It's probably reached its market cap, and it really hasn't yet. Podcasting is still growing. 64% of the U.S. population has listened to a podcast. 42% of the U.S. population has listened to a podcast in the last month. 31% of the population has listened to a podcast in the last week. Now, those numbers still continue to grow, as you can see from Edison Research, and Edison Research has been leading the charge on tracking podcasting, tracking audio listening on the internet, all those kinds of things. The market for podcasts skews slightly male, 53% versus 46%, but they are more educated, they are more employed, and they are more affluent. And so while starting a podcast may not be something that everyone needs to do, in fact, I don't think everyone needs to do it. I think if someone is growing a business, they need to be appearing on podcasts. They need to look at podcasts and show up on them. Since 2015, the average time weekly podcast listeners spend with podcasts has doubled. And the beauty of it is podcasting can be very hyper niche. So if you are talking specifically to single moms who have a business, that's who you want to talk to, and you're consulting for them and you're kind of trying to build a market with them. Absolutely. I guarantee you there are single mom podcasts out there. There are podcasts for only pastors. There are podcasts for specific food types that people like. Bradley Chaddock, Holy Smokes Club podcast. That's a podcast that I've been doing now for a few years. Holy Smokes is, as far as we know, the world's largest private cigar club. We have 5,500 members around the world and chapters all around the world. It's great. I love it.
There you go. If you have a specialized audience that you want to talk to, podcast is the way to do it, huh?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's, and here's the thing. I mean, anyone knows that all it takes is 500 rabid followers that are subscribing to what you're doing. You can make a living versus, having 10,000 that aren't really engaged with you, but they just kind of follow you. There's something fundamentally different between that.
So you're saying the podcaster, the followers are more likely to engage and really be part of the tribe, as opposed to perhaps having 80,000 followers on Instagram. That's much harder to convert.
Absolutely. What we have found is that advertising podcasts on social media can help to get new people into the ecosystem, but especially when it comes to the algorithms and them wanting you to pay as a business page to get to spread the word, they really throttle the reach that social media has. Whereas podcast, email list, those are direct connections to the people that are potentially following you. And so
like you mentioned, the throttle on that, right? We all know that when you post something on social media, just a small percentage of your audience actually sees it, right?
Yes.
Whereas when it comes to podcasting, they're following you and they're interested. They're actually going to come find it. They're going to come listen to it. They're going to subscribe to it, right? If you send it to them in the email, right, it's sitting there right there waiting for them.
Yeah.
Much more direct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A friend of mine and I started a podcast 11 years ago called Eternal Leadership. And what we did when we started Eternal Leadership is we partnered with 2 organizations that didn't have podcasts and at the time had no interest in starting a podcast. But we would bring on a Pinnacle Forum partner, and we brought on a Halftime Institute alum once a month. So 2 out of the 4 to 5 weeks every month were a Pinnacle partner and a Halftime alum. And they blasted it out every single month to their email list. And that first 6 weeks that we were eligible at the time to be listed in New and Noteworthy, we made it to the front page. We were number 1 in business for quite a while. We actually made it to the front page. And so I often tell people, if you're going to start a podcast, try and find some partner organizations that don't have one that you can bring on and use their email list, leverage their email list and social media reach to start to really grow your show.
I am loving that. As the networking diva, I'm all about collaborations. And that was a prime example of how to collaborate to get your business really rocking and rolling right there. Great example, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you. So if someone listening has a book, you need to have an audiobook. You need to, period. End of story. There are some easier ways in which you can do it, and I'll get to those, but 53% of Americans have listened to an audiobook, up from 45% in 2022. 11 straight years of double-digit growth.
Wow.
And Goodreads expects audiobooks to surpass print and ebook sales combined in the very near future.
Wow, that's impressive. I had realized that audiobooks were on the rise. I hadn't realized how much, though.
Yeah, it's something that, I used to read a bunch. My mom was a librarian at the public library, and then moved over to be the elementary school librarian in my hometown in Wisconsin. You can see all the books back here. You can just see, and I've read almost all of them. But in the last 5 years, my ratio of books to audiobooks has really gone audiobooks mainly. And thanks, Chris.
Your fans are loving you.
Yeah. So I really believe that people need to do an audiobook. Now, if people say, I don't like the sound of my voice, guess what? Get used to it. It does really, get over it, really, because your voice is part of your brand. And
is. And they've got professional, voice artists that you could hire if you really can't do it, if that's just not your gig, right? But like you said, your voice is your brand. And so you're missing an opportunity.
Christine, the only time I ever recommend, ever, say, yeah, maybe we do hire someone, are two things: fiction and biographies. Maybe a biography. I did hear David Moranis in his book about, I believe it was Jim Thorpe. He read his biography of Jim Thorpe, the professional baseball and football player from 100 plus years ago. He did a great job. I have heard others where I've listened to them speak, maybe on found them on YouTube, and I was like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe they shouldn't be reading their book if they, and most likely they didn't. But if it's a nonfiction book, you need to be reading it. You do, because your voice is part of the brand, and you are going to bring much more energy, emotion, humor, levity, those inflection on certain words that a narrator like myself is never going to be able to replicate. More and more people I have heard, yeah, if the author isn't reading it, I don't want to listen to it. More and more people. So your voice is part of your brand. You need to read your book. Now, what about, some people may be asking, what about a company like 11 Labs, where I upload my voice and they use AI to replicate my voice and read the book? One, ACX, which is the Audiobook Creation Exchange, they're not going to accept it. Kindle Direct Publishing does have the ability, to automatically, through their virtual voice library, to move it over into an audiobook. But again, they're not going to bring that emotion and that inflection, and people don't want to hear it. Voices.com conducted a survey in 2023 asking audiobook listeners, are you interested in AI narration? 53% of those respondents said they would prefer a human narrator or are simply not interested. 34% indicated they'd be open to an AI narrator, but I wonder how many of those, once they listen, would move over into that, would prefer a human narrator or are simply not interested. Why? AI narration doesn't possess the ability to change pacing, inflection, tone, all those kinds of things that you will be able to do when you read your book. So AI can't smile or chuckle. You hear a smile when someone is smiling in what they're reading or what they're talking about. So AI, really not yet.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if they did a test, right? Which one did you like the sound of better, right? I mean,
that'd be a great one. That'd be a great one.
Yeah.
So if you have a book and I do need to do an audiobook, one of the things to consider is audiobook extras. I heard this from David Goggins, and I've taken it with clients and I've kind of morphed it into something more, where at the end of every chapter, you can have maybe a short interview from peers, colleagues, people you look up to. Maybe you can have a short conversation where a co-host sets you up to talk about things that maybe were taken out in the editing process, or if the book was released a couple of years ago, maybe some updates, some new stories, some new stats that you could talk about. Or I've had a couple of clients where at the end of the book, they've just done a kind of a longer form podcast where someone interviews them and it's some summary thoughts and maybe a tease for the next book. The beautiful thing about that first one, where you're interviewing peers, colleagues, people you look up to, is many of them may be willing to email that out to their email list and blast it out on social media that they appeared on your audiobook. So then you get that added collaborative marketing effort. I have our first audiobook that we worked on, our very first one, Mike Kim, he wrote the book, You Are the Brand. And he did exactly that. I pitched it to him like, hey, what do you think about this? And he was like, I love it. and he did those interviews. And he leveraged all of those connections for each of those chapters into making the Wall Street Journal bestseller list and the USA Today bestseller list. So audiobook, and also it gives, for people that bought that print or ebook or both, it gives them an incentive to maybe buy the audiobook in addition to that.
Because you've got those extra takes on it that the print version didn't have. Yeah, I could see that.
And then you've got guys like me who, when I'm reading a book, I actually like to listen to it as well, because it helps to solidify those points. And so for like the books that I really want to dig into, like the last one that I listened to and read at the same time was Peter Attia's book about his health book. I forget the name of it right now. I'm spacing it, but Dr. Peter Attia, he's a doctor now in Austin who has a podcast called The Drive. It's all about health, and Peter's amazing. I listened to it and I read it. It's because I really wanted those points to really hit home for my health journey.
Wow, the great advice. There it is. If you want to really learn something and dive into it, get both.
So if you don't have a book yet, but you've thought about it, ChatGPT and all the other AIs, Grok, etc., large language models, they can really help you to build a book. And if you're an auditory processor, starting a podcast is a great way to help to build a book. I mean,
great place to grab that content, right? And
yes.
Yeah.
So you can take all of those transcripts, throw in, and you have services like Descript, Otter AI, Riverside.fm. They'll automatically transcribe those episodes. You can take those transcripts, dump them into AI, and you can start to build it from there, where you can start to work and it'll walk you through all of the steps. Okay, what's the next step? We need an outline. What would be a good narrative story to kind of tell throughout this book? And yeah, I'm actually in the process of doing that right now. So 5 years ago in 2 months, my wife passed away, and it was a long, she dealt with health issues our entire marriage, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and in 2014, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. So she had a long health history, complex. She thought she had COVID. It wasn't COVID. Her doctor wouldn't see her in person. You can't diagnose a lung infection that's developing into pneumonia and sepsis over virtual visits. And so she ended up getting hospitalized, 21 days in the hospital. I was never allowed in until she was dead.
Oh, no.
I created a nonprofit called the Never Alone Project. The goal is ultimately to see federal legislation that protects a patient's right to at least one screened loved one per day, no time limits, no matter what's going on, because isolation was killing people. We have study after study shows having a loved one there aids in the healing process. And then conversely, way more studies show the detriments of loneliness. So in trying to keep this thing moving forward, I started a podcast last year where I'm interviewing people and getting their stories and interviewing experts and those kinds of things. I'm taking all of those transcripts and I'm going to do two things with them in AI. I'm going to, one, build a 1-season narrative podcast, 12 to 15 episodes, maybe 20, I don't know. And we're going to tell the story of what happened. Why did this go wrong? How did this affect people? And what's a sensible plan moving forward? Conversely, I'm going to take all those transcripts and I'm going to build a book out of it too. And I'm going to have all of these interviews that I'll be able to excerpt and throw into the audiobook. So that way, this is a different audiobook where I've got all these different voices coming in, and I'm kind of doing this audiobook in a way that is almost NPR style. So if someone doesn't have a book, but they've thought about it, AI can be amazing. AI with a podcast can be an amazing way to help to get a book put together.
Absolutely. So gather all your goodies so that you can pull it into that AI. It can help with themes. It's really great at organizing things. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun pulling AI into that.
Yeah.
I love how you're doing that.
And with Bradley Chaddock having mentioned Holy Smokes, oh my gosh, the thought just hit me. I should do the same. I should do this with the Holy Smokes podcast. I have probably 150 episodes now for Holy Smokes. So there's a whole lot of content in there that I can use to help to start to build a book for Holy Smokes Club, because at the end of every episode, I do rapid fire questions where I ask them their favorite cigar, best dollar for dollar cigar, when did they start, all those kinds of things that can be put into a book to really kind of start to help to be a resource for that faith-based cigar smoking community.
I was just thinking about a lead magnet with the top 10 favorite cigars,
Yes.
right? I mean, you can do all sorts of fun things
absolutely.
with that. Oh, yep.
Absolutely.
We're hearing all sorts of some excitement about that one.
Bradley just said yes. So quality is very underrated. In 2022, Texas Tech did a study. They titled it Effects of Audio Quality on Retention and Viewer Perception in Online Educational Video. And two of the quotes I have right there: retention is lower amongst learners who are exposed to a lower quality audio source. Mm-hmm. And then people notice when they receive poor audio. So again, get a microphone. And here's the beautiful thing. Most of the audiobooks that we have done over the last, probably almost 5 years since we've been doing audiobooks, most of them are recorded in their home podcast studio. Mm-hmm. So, and we have the ability to, if your room has some reverb, we can hang blankets on those walls, some nice heavy blankets to help to reduce it. If you've got a big walk-in closet, we just had a couple, Robert and Kaylee Fukui, who wrote a book about husband and wife in business stuff. They recorded theirs in their walk-in closet. I remember when the pandemic first happened. I remember listening to This American Life, and that's what Ira Glass said. I'm in my home walk-in closet because the studio is closed, and we got a show we still got to put out. And so it works. It works. And even if we can almost always get it to a point where with denoiser plugins and everything, we're able to get those noise levels down. So that way, like if you have an AC on or a laptop fan or whatever, we can get those down to where ACX, the Audiobook Creation Exchange, which is owned by Amazon Audible, we can get it to a point where, and they're really sticklers for all of their specs in terms of noise floor, overall levels, all that kind of stuff. We can get it within those specs so that way your audiobook will get accepted.
Ooh, that's a whole different area. People just assumed you make it and you're good, but there's rules and regulations on this. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So working with someone who is a professional can definitely help. So as I said, I came out of a Radio Hall of Fame background in production, largest rollout in radio history. And I've got 2 freebies for anyone watching this, listening to this, where you can email me and I'll send you a PDF about how to guest on podcasts, because like I said, not everyone needs to start a podcast, but I think just about everyone, if you're growing a business, you need to appear on podcasts. And I've got some tips and tricks on how to get on podcasts. Mm-hmm. And then also, if you just want to just jump on a call with me for a consultation and talk about what you're doing, I'll throw out ideas for free. Just it's a free call, 1 hour call where we can just riff, talk about what you're doing, and see if where you are in your journey. And because ideation, I don't know if you're familiar with StrengthsFinder 2.0, but it's 34 strengths listed 1 through 34. It's created by a guy named Clifton. It's now run by Gallup organization, bought it. It's 34 strengths that are divided into 4 quadrants: strategic thinking, influencing, execution, and relationships, I believe, is the fourth. And my number one strength is ideation. So I love coming up with new ideas. And my number 4 is strategy. So I love coming up with new ideas and seeing, oh, we could do this, or we could do that. Let's take what you're doing over here and let's repurpose this over here. And those kinds of things.
Well, I just dropped your LinkedIn link in the comments there. So if anybody wants to reach out, go ahead and click on that and reach out and send a connection request to Steve, because if he's going to have that call with you, I think you've got lots of opportunities and things they might want to talk to you about. I don't know about y'all, but I've been going, mental note, need to remember that, right? So your list that you've been writing down is probably getting pretty long about now.
So yeah, I'm here. I've got 10 editors that work for me, 2 producers, and we produce podcasts, radio, audiobooks, and the video associated with those projects. So
yeah, it's amazing once you really start diving in. You don't realize what you don't know until you find out that you don't know it, right? So most people were probably thinking, oh, you just get on and you talk. Oh, no, there's more to it than that. If you want to sound really good like Steve, right? He gave us those details on the what he's using to speak, right? There's so much that really goes into it, or the rules of being able to submit your audiobook, right? So a wealth of knowledge. Absolutely reach out to Steve, because I know I have more questions are popping in my head as we go. If anybody listening has any questions for him, pop those in the chat and we'll see if we can address those as we're going, because wow, just amazing. I'm going to go ahead and drop your email address. And also you're saying that they can email you did you have something special?
yes, I've got that PDF of how to guest on podcasts.
Ooh.
So how to find podcasts, how to reach out to them in a way that will make you more appealing than most of the emails that we get as podcasters, because we get lots of emails, these PR companies or these podcast booking companies. So often they'll just send an email saying, hey, I've got a guest. Mm-hmm. No, let's massage. If you want to appear in a podcast, massage that relationship a little bit. Talk about how much you listen to an episode and tell them what you liked about it. And then, oh, hey, I can also talk about X, Y, and Z. Are you guys taking guests? And start to massage that relationship so you're appearing on podcasts, because like I said, not everyone should start a podcast. And here's the beautiful thing. Even if you do start a podcast, you don't have to start it and go on forever. It can be something where it's every other week. And if it's every other week, okay, well, hey, it's just sitting down and recording once or twice a month at most. Because you sit down and you record 2 episodes in one sitting, you're done for a month. Mm-hmm. Or almost a month. And so you stack those and okay, here you go. Most people can find a couple hours once a month or twice a month to do something like this.
Doesn't have to take over your life is what you're saying.
Exactly. Or also, I mean, I've thought about this for Joe Sharketti. He was the first one to comment during the stream. We went to church together for a while. And while I was going to church there, I thought, hey, most churches, with their podcast feed, all they put in there is the weekly sermon. That's it. 99% of the people I've ever talked to that sit in the pews, they don't re-listen to that sermon. They don't. 99% of the people don't. What is something that a church could be putting into their podcast feed to help deepen community, grow relationships, all those kinds of things that a church is trying to do? Well, okay, let's use the podcast feed to tell people stories, because there is something fundamentally different between reading a sterile bio on a website and hearing someone talk about their story. What if the church is giving to missionaries? What if you brought on those missionaries on a quarterly basis to give updates? What if you did sermon previews? And what if you did, they're all, I've got a list of over 3 dozen ideas for churches. When it comes to doctors' offices, medical offices, dentists, chiropractors, etc., you don't need to create a podcast that is going to go on forever. What if you just create a 12 or 15 episodes where you're telling your story and you're talking about answering questions and answers, and you're doing this so that way people can hear you and start to develop a deeper relationship, move them down that marketing funnel to where they become really invested in the business, and they're raving fans and they're referring people, all those kinds of things. So podcasting doesn't have to go on forever. It could be something where it's just a simple 1-season podcast for a book or for a business, whatever.
A series with a purpose, right?
Exactly.
And, business owners, maybe you have more than one service, right? Many times you do. So maybe this series is going to focus on one particular service, and another, after a break, come back in and do another series on a different service that you're working on, right? There's lots of possibilities. So it doesn't have to take over your life, but once you've created it, you can use it in so many different ways, repurpose it. Like the audiobooks you were talking about. I'm looking forward to seeing what you create with all that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I am someone who is very fortunate in that I discovered what I like to do at a very young age. When I was in 4th grade, my uncle brought us a Fisher-Price cassette recorder, and I used to make radio shows in the backyard with my friends.
Oh, I love it.
And in fact, I have a lifelong friend, Phil Schultz. He's down in downtown Chicago. He has a sign company, graphic artist. I was hanging out with Phil, working in his office. We were both working. I was on my laptop working on some stuff. He was working on his stuff, and he looked over to me. He was like, "I think it's funny you're working in audio and radio. Do you remember when we were kids and we used to make radio shows in your backyard?" And then in 6th grade, I hosted a kids news segment at a local radio station. And then when I was a senior in high school, I had a friend of mine who I knew since the 1st grade, Patricia Cadena. And she looked at me and she said, "Steve," we were making a radio spot for the morning announcements. And when I was doing it, while we were doing it, she looked at me and she said, "Steve, I've never seen you smile like this before." And it was during a time in college where I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I remembered those 3 things, and I was like, yeah, radio, audio production, that'd be fun. So yeah, I'm fortunate in that I'm doing something I've loved my entire life.
And that's a whole nother topic for a podcast right there too.
Yeah.
Loving what you do makes a huge difference. Like you said, you can hear the smile, right? You put that energy out there. I love that. Obviously, you're very passionate about the whole voice. And I got to tell you, I've never thought about it as deep as we've gone today. And, you've got me thinking in whole new lights. Right? So maybe I'll get inspired. I need a big microphone in front of my face. And what did you call the thing right there?
Pop filter.
Pop filter, right?
Yep.
So I don't need to pull out one of my nylons. Put over the microphone. We're good. We can have some fun with this.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell us again what that was. If they're loving the sound and the way you're sounding, What do you have again?
So this is an Audio Technica AT2020. So I'm going to throw this.
I was going to say, we're not going to remember that. Give us a hand here, Steve.
Audio Technica AT2020. And they have a regular version, which is this one, and they have a USB version. The USB version is super easy because all you do is you just plug it into your computer and boom, it's there. You just make sure whether it's on Zoom, whether you're recording it, whatever, make sure the microphone is set from the internal to the microphone. And then if you want to step it up, if you have a home setup and you just want to take that just a hair to where only the audio files are going to be the ones that are going to notice the difference. You can get the regular AT2020, and then you can get a Scarlett, either a Scarlett Solo, and it's Scarlett with 2 T's, by Focusrite. The company is Focus, RITE. Focusrite makes some amazing microphone preamps for studios, high-end studios, Focusrite preamps are really, really good. And so they make a consumer version that is a converter, an analog to digital converter. And they make the Solo, the 2i2, and 8i8s and some bigger ones. But chances are nearly everyone, all they're going to need is a Solo if it's just one microphone. If you're looking at possibly two microphones, getting a 2i2, or if you are going to have 4 microphones or potentially 8, getting the 4i4 or the 8i8. But yeah,
that was a lot of nerd speak right there. So listen to that one more time, right? So you might have to rewind things and listen to it again and catch all that, because that was a lot of details for those of us who are like, you just plug it in and it goes, right?
Yeah.
All about the plug and play. Chris is wondering, do you recommend audio and video for a podcast?
Yes. Plain and simple. That's a short answer is yes. The reason is because YouTube is the second largest search engine out there, and having even the video, and there are services like Riverside.fm, and they can record audio and video. What I love about Riverside, and most of my clients are on Riverside, is within the Google Chrome browser or the app or Microsoft Edge or whatever. It doesn't work with Safari, but it does work with a number of browsers. And they do have an app. They record uncompressed audio and HD or 4K, depending on the camera, video directly within that browser or app. So instead of a service like StreamYard, where my feed is going to StreamYard, Christine's feed is going to StreamYard, and if my internet has a hiccup or a glitch, which I think it might have at one point, you're going to get that glitch. Whereas with Riverside, because it's recording directly within the browser, you know what is going to be uploaded, what is being uploaded in the background is uncompressed, unglitchy. It's directly within that browser. And so you can take that, and Riverside has some basic editing tools. So you can throw clips onto social media, and you can post it to YouTube and post it to wherever. So Riverside is amazing. And yes, I do believe that people should be doing video. Now in the podcast feed, only release audio. Only release audio. Because, back in the day, especially when people were paying for data, now most plans are unlimited, but it's just a tax on the memory storage on the phone and downloading and bandwidth, all that. And plus, just have it there on YouTube, it aids in discoverability. I can't tell you the number of times, and most people that I've talked to, they don't listen to podcasts on YouTube, but they do find them, and then they go to their podcast app and listen to it there, especially if they become a subscriber and become a regular listener.
More wealth of knowledge right there. So if people are thinking about starting a podcast, is that something you could talk to them about? Absolutely.
Yes. We can help get them started. We can walk them through and see if it's even a good thing. Because maybe right now to start out, it's good for them to just appear on podcasts. And maybe down the road, or maybe it's never they start a podcast, but they just appear on podcasts. It totally depends. It totally depends on the situation. Because there's nothing worse for me than getting someone started and having to babysit them every step of the way and try and push them along. No, this is something that I want them to be able to run with, and for us to be running alongside, helping them, so that way their time is spent not on editing, not on all of the details after they record, but their focus is on getting new guests, prepping, interviewing, and interfacing with their community. That's all a podcaster needs to be thinking about, is just those things: finding new guests, prepping, interviewing, and building community.
Right. Not worrying about all the technical stuff and what happens to it afterwards and where it should go. And keep them focused on what they do best.
Exactly.
I love that. So if they're thinking about it, they should reach out and talk to you. We dropped your email address. They can reach out to you there, or your LinkedIn profile, make friends and get connected there. Now, what if they were like, I already have a podcast, but he's got some brilliant ideas on how to make it more powerful. Can they have a conversation with you about that?
Absolutely. Let's jump on a call. And just kind of see where things are, what you're doing, who you're working with, if you're working with anyone, and see if nothing else, I can just maybe give you a couple ideas, or we can help take all the editing off of your plate, and so that way you can focus on those big 4 things.
Absolutely. It's nice to not have to worry about that, right?
Yeah. Or maybe it's coming up with some new ideas. Hey, what if, okay, you're doing this thing over here. What if you repurpose this into the podcast feed? What if you take this and you put it over here? And I love talking about stuff like that. Love it. It's fun.
So you can get on a call with them and have some fun having that conversation. Now, you mentioned that the free PDF that you have, if they drop you an email, right? How to get booked on podcasts. Now, is that something that you do? Do you do the podcast bookings for people, or you just do the productions?
No, we just do the production. I have some PR people and some podcast booking companies that I know and trust that I can introduce you to.
Okay.
Especially if you've got a book coming out, if you've got something like a big new service that you're unveiling, releasing, you have a big launch coming up, whatever, getting on podcasts needs to be something that you do. And the PDF was really created for people that are doing it themselves, or they have a virtual assistant that can help to get the word out. And so it's really just to kind of help to get them going, so that way they can get themselves, or their assistant can get them booked on podcasts.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming in and sharing all this knowledge with us. And I know you've got people thinking about, what can I do to make my podcast more exciting? Or maybe I do want to start one. So reach out to Steve, because, oh my goodness, once again, emails on the screen, websites on the screen. So your business is Right Turn Media. So rightturn.media. Go check it out. See what else he's up to. I'm sure there's all sorts of wonderful goodies on there. I'm going to pull that off the screen. So thanks, Steve, for hanging out with us today. Appreciate having you here. And that's it for another broadcast, our Tuesday marketing broadcast with Giver Marketing. We're here every Tuesday. Tune in and have some fun with us. Now, also on Wednesdays, we have a ongoing networking for marketers. So if you're a marketer, if you're in the media space, maybe you have podcasts, whatever that space is, if marketing is your baby, then come hang out with us. Don't be a lonelypreneur. So on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific or 11 Eastern, we're always at givermarketing.com/networking. And you can come hang out with me. I always host that on Wednesdays. And we just have fun and get to know each other and work together and look at white labeling and how to collaborate, which was the theme for today. I loved all those examples you had going, Steve. So come hang out with us and be part of our tribe. And we'll see you next time.